Okay, so we've opened up a new sheet here in A3. It hasn't been saved or anything yet, but what we want to do is work in isometric. Isometric is basically 3 dimensions, so at the moment this is an orthogonal grid, which means that it has vertical and horizontal. We want to come up to this grid and right click on it to get up the different settings for the grids, and we're going to change over to isometric and click OK and watch what happens. So now we've got a series of lines that are working on 30° and 90° angles. So isometric, if I zoom in and show it to you a little bit closer up, this is what the grid looks like. So if I wanted to draw a cube in isometric, the simplest way of doing it, I might make my line a bit thicker so it stands out on this drawing, is to basically switch on my grid lock and I will draw a cube. So you can see that I'm locking to each position, and this is creating a 3x3 cube. Now this is isometric. Okay, usually when you draw in isometric, the first line to draw is this one here, the one that faces directly at you, and then you go to the left and to the right from there. If you find that you need to reposition things, as long as your grid is switched on, your grid lock switched on, you can select the whole object by going over it, grabbing the center, and you can move it within that area and it will lock back onto the isometric coordinates. If you find that you do something wrong, so say we made one of these lines and this line was actually too long, so I'd gone from here and I'd overextended by accidentally clicking. Rather than having to delete the whole thing, if we hold down on the delete any key and we can choose part, and it asks you now to locate, you click on the location and it will remove part of a line. It's actually quite useful to do this sometimes when you're drawing. So sometimes you actually, as you would hand sketch something, you'd go over the area that you want, then you can always go back and remove the bits you don't need. Okay, finally we'll have a little look at doing some isometric shading. So usually to make things look correct in 3D you have to shade them, and we normally start off with the top being light, the left hand side being medium, and then the right hand side being the darkest tone. Now the easiest way to do that is to actually go back over your shape, is to use a closed polyline tool, and we're going to keep the line color the same, but I'm going to go for a fill color first of all, and I'm going to go for a solid color, and this is where I get to actually choose. So I'm going to go for, maybe I'll go for a kind of purpley type color, but I'm going to go for my custom ones. So in my custom one I'm going to go for the lightest shade of it first, which is up here. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to fill this first shape. If I right click it will join the two things up, and there's my light shade. I'm going to do the next one, but before I do the next one I'm going to go a little bit darker. So same thing, I'm going to define my custom color, I'm going to drag this down a little bit, go a little bit darker, say OK. Same thing on this side. And then finally I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go for a slightly darker again, go to my custom colors, move this down a little bit darker again, and choose my right hand side. And there you go. So that's how to draw in isometric, and that's how to shade in isometric. The last thing you might want to do is now how to group things together. So if you want to turn all this into one object, you can highlight the whole thing, go into edit and choose the word group. Now this is one object that you can do whatever you want to do with, without having to select all the individual bits. You can always ungroup in the same way if you needed to.